Okay, so picture this. You've got this brilliant business idea, or actually, maybe it's an existing company that's just getting ready to absolutely explode onto the global stage. There's really only one problem. You need a massive amount of funds to make it happen. We're talking millions, maybe even billions. And obviously, no single bank or individual is just going to hand you a check for that kind of money. So what do? Where does the money come from? Well, you turn to the public. You issue shares. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the high-stakes, highly structured world of company accounts, and we're specifically focusing on the issue of shares. Let's get into it. All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. Today, we're going to cover what shares actually are, the share capital hierarchy, the specific steps in a public issue, how to record the journal entries, pricing variations, and finally, how we deal with defaulting shareholders. Section 1. What are shares anyway? So before we can start counting the cash, we've kind of got to know what it is we're actually selling, right? To raise these enormous amounts of capital, a company essentially divides its total financial requirement into tiny, manageable little pieces, pieces that the general public can actually afford to buy. The Companies Act of 2013, specifically Section 284, has a surprisingly straightforward definition for this. It says a share is quite literally just a share in the capital of a company. When you buy one of these small parts, you're quite literally buying a slice of the pie. But as we're about to see, not all slices are created equal. Now, there are two main flavors of shares here, and they offer vastly different experiences for the investor. First, think about equity shares. These investors, they're the ultimate risk bearers. They don't get a fixed dividend, and honestly, they get paid last. But because they take on all that maximum risk, they are considered the real owners of the company. On the flip side, we have preference shares. These investors are looking for a safer bet. They get a fixed rate of dividend before the equity holders even see a dime. And if the company goes under and has to shut down, preference shareholders get their capital repaid first. So it's really a classic trade-off, high-risk ownership versus prioritized safety. Section 2, the share capital hierarchy. Okay, let's put our accountant hats on for a second. When a company authorizes billions in capital, it definitely doesn't just magically show up in the bank account overnight. Think of this whole process like a giant funnel. At the very top, you have authorized capital, which is the absolute maximum the company is legally allowed to raise, as set out in their Memorandum of Association. From that massive pool, they take a slice to actually offer to the public. That's issued capital. But hey, the public might not want all of it, right? So what they actually apply for is called subscribed capital. Moving further down the funnel, the company might not need all that money right this second, so what they currently ask for is called up capital. And finally, at the very bottom of the funnel, the actual cash that hits the bank account, because let's face it, sometimes people don't pay what they owe, is the paid up capital. Section 3. Steps in a public issue. So, how do we actually physically move this money from thousands of individual bank accounts over into the company's control? Well, it happens in a very strict linear journey. A public issue is essentially just an installment plan. Step 1, the company issues a prospectus. This is a massive document that formally invites the public to invest. Step 2, interested investors send in an application and they include some initial money with it. Step 3, the directors review all these applications and officially assign or allot the shares. Usually at this point, they also demand the second installment of the money. And finally, Step 4, as the company needs more cash over time, they make calls to demand the remaining balance. Application, allotment, and calls. Breaking it down this way makes raising millions of dollars incredibly intuitive and manageable. Section 4. Recording the journal entries. All right, now we need to translate those real-world steps, the applications, the allotments, the calls, into the official language of business. Journal entries. What's really fascinating here is the rhythm of it all. Every single milestone triggers two clean, logical entries. When application money comes in, bank is debited, and share application is credited. Simple enough. Then that application money is moved to its permanent home, share capital. From there, it just becomes a repeating pattern of demanding and receiving. The company demands allotment money by debiting share allotment and crediting share capital, which creates an asset of money owed. Then, when the cash actually arrives, bank is debited, wiping out that allotment asset. It's this beautifully balanced dance. You're constantly tracking cash moving in while simultaneously watching the share capital grow. Section 5. Pricing and subscription variations. Okay, so the journal entries we just looked at, those assume a perfect world, but the stock market is, in reality, essentially a giant popularity contest. Demand fluctuates wildly. So let's talk about price. A company has a set face value for its share. Let's say it's 10 rupees. If they sell it for exactly 10 rupees, that's called issuing at par. But if the company is wildly successful and everybody wants a piece of the action, they can issue it at a premium, say 12 rupees. That extra 2 rupees doesn't just get dumped into standard share capital. No, it goes into a special reserve called the Securities Premium Account. Finally, there's issuing at a discount, which means selling below face value. This is a literal loss for the company, so as you might guess, it's very rarely done.
And pricing brilliantly illustrates how companies have to react to the public's appetite. If the public applies for fewer shares than what's offered, well, that's undersubscription. Pretty straightforward. But what if there's an absolute frenzy? What if the company issues 10,000 shares, but the public sends in applications and money for 30,000 shares? That is oversubscription. Now, the company cannot just go, sweet, let's keep the extra money and issue more shares than they're authorized to. They have to deal with it. They can either reject the excess applications and refund the cash entirely, or they can use a pretty clever accounting trick.
That clever trick is called pro rata allotment. Instead of sending angry, disappointed investors away empty-handed with a refund, the directors simply reduce the number of shares given to everyone, proportionally. So if you applied for 3 shares, you might only get 1. But wait, what about the extra application money you already sent in for those other 2? Well, instead of refunding it, the company just holds on to it. They apply it towards your next installment, the upcoming allotment demand. It is such an incredibly elegant solution. The company keeps the cash safely in their ecosystem, and the investor still gets a piece of the action. Win-win.
Section 6. Dealing with defaulting shareholders. Up till now, we've talked about what happens when people want your shares too much. But take a second to ponder this dramatic complication. What happens when an investor goes rogue? Remember that installment plan we talked about? Let's say an investor pays the application money, they get their shares allotted, but then crickets. Absolute silence. The company makes a call demanding the next payment, and the investor simply ignores it. What exactly is a company supposed to do then? Well, immediately, this creates an accounting gap. The company asked for the money, that's our called-up capital, but the cash never arrived, so our paid-up capital is suddenly lower. This specific difference, this missing chunk of money, is officially classified as calls in arrears. It just sits on the books as an unpaid debt. Oh, and just as a quick aside, if an eager investor actually pays early, that's called calls in advance, and the company actually records that as a liability. Pretty funny, right? But back to our non-payer. A company can't just wait around forever. They send reminders. But if the shareholder still ignores them, the company pulls out the ultimate penalty. So the crucial point is this. The directors have the power to enact a forfeiture of shares. They literally just cancel the shares. The defaulting investor loses their ownership status entirely. Poof, gone. But honestly, it gets worse for them. The company doesn't refund the application or allotment money the investor already paid earlier. Nope, the company seizes it. They seize the money and they take back the shares. It sounds harsh, absolutely, but it's a completely necessary mechanism to ensure the company gets the capital it needs to survive. Okay, so now the company is sitting on a pile of seized shares. What do they do with them? The narrative arc concludes pretty beautifully right here. They just replace the bad investor. The directors have the power to reissue these forfeited shares. They can just turn around and sell them to a brand new investor. Usually, they'll offer them at a slight discount to make them attractive, which patches up the hole in their capital and neatly closes the loop. The company ends up fully funded, exactly as intended from the start. We've really covered a ton of ground today, from the raw, legal definition of a share all the way through the complexities of pro rata allotments, premium pricing, and literally seizing shares back from defaulting investors. It's a massive, highly synchronized financial engine. So I'll leave you with this thought. Next time you hear about a hot new IPO hitting the news, will you look at their prospectus as just some slick marketing brochure, or will you see it for what it truly is, the very first step in a complex, high-stakes accounting journey designed to raise millions? Definitely keep that in mind next time you see the markets moving. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.